Hi, welcome to Car and Mechanical. In part 3 of the Honda Jazz gearbox removal and replacement, we're going to be removing the subframe and the gearbox mount. So the first thing we're going to do to get the subframe off is to undo the power steering motor. So I've already slacked these off. Now I'm going to put all of the bolt sizes on screen as we see them. Now to undo this, you can either sort of do it in there, but it's a bit tight. I came from on top in the engine bay and used some extensions on some sockets. So we have these two bolts and this plate that holds everything together. So we undo the first one, we'll undo the second one, and then we can loosen that and take that out, and that's going to free the motor off. Next, there's a bit of under tray, and sorry this is a bit blurry, that attaches to the subframe that we need to undo. So it's a little pop rivet. We're just going to undo it there. You pop that out. It just stops it from getting pulled down or ripped when we do take the subframe out itself. So there's one on either side actually. So we've got one on the passenger side and one on the driver's side. Okay, this next part doesn't really fit in with the subframe, but it's just sort of the order I did it in. So we need to undo this very long threaded bolt. And with that threaded bolt, we also need to take off this little bit of side bracket that's on the side of the gearbox. So you can sort of see me reaching around underneath and undoing that. I needed to pull that off so I could get the threaded bolt all the way back, because I could see myself having issues with the socket and extensions and everything just to be able to get that all the way. This took quite a long time to undo, and I'm going to cut across the video to it coming out, but just undo it. I ended up using a ratcheting spanner because I didn't have the space behind to use a socket. Right, so to take the bracket off, there's 4 bolts we need to get out of the way. The first one isn't really critical as such, but it's going to get snagged otherwise, and it's the earth strap. So we're going to undo it, we're going to remove the earth strap, we're going to put the bolt back in for safekeeping because it's not holding it onto the gearbox itself. Then there's the 3 other bolts. So there's one right next to the earth strap we can see there, so we're going to get that undone. There's the centre one, which you're going to need a long socket for, and then there's one over the back. Now, you can also start this off by putting some plus gas on. You can see I did it midway through with some of the ones that were a little bit more stubborn. Once all of those are undone, we can take that bracket off. Right, so with that done, let's carry on with getting the subframe off, and with that is going to be the steering rack first to address. Now to do this, we're going to go onto the car in a second, but first I'm going to show you all of the extensions I needed to get on top of your typical, I think it's 200 piece Halfords toolkit. I needed to use quite a number of extensions and wobble bits just to be able to come in and undo some of these bolts from underneath. So we needed quite a bit of torque from on top to undo them, but once they were undone I could get underneath with a short ratchet and undo things. So you've got quite a number of sockets on there. So I'm going to crack that open and I'm going to go underneath. Now some of this you can do fully from on top, some of it's easier to shorten the sockets a bit and undo that way, and some of it you have to get on your back and get underneath to undo. All I'm going to really try and do here is to illustrate different things I was trying to do to get all of these different bits and pieces undone. They weren't really spanner worthy jobs. So there's the first 2 on the steering rack. These next 2 I could crack off on top, but the access was really poor, so I needed to go underneath to undo them fully. Basically I couldn't ratchet with the breaker bar, and that's the kind of angles I was having to get with the breaker bar in between everything else. So you can get the breaker bar down there and you can sort of see the angles that I'm going for. And apologies for the footage, but basically I'm laying on my back holding the camera with one hand so it's a bit low light, poor quality, and using a very short stubby ratcheting spanner with the other to undo that bolt because of the exhaust blocks it to be able to get access otherwise. Right, so what this is illustrating is the sheer number of extensions I was having to use, and on the end of that is a wobble joint, and I had to place that underneath the car and then put all the extensions in from on top. But basically I could then do this bolt here, and you can see the insane amount of extensions I was having to use. And then here I can get a bit of pivot on the breaker bar, but then I can also get a ratcheting socket on there and we can undo everything that way. So some you can get in with extensions to undo everything, and some you can't. Now for the sake of not making this really long, I've cut a bunch of footage out, but if we just look at this little bit underneath, you can see the very limited access I had. If you have the full use of both hands and you weren't trying to film at the same time, this is a lot easier. Right, so that's the last of the bolts holding all the steering rack on the subframe in place. So what we're going to move on to next is getting the main subframe bolts undone. Right, so before we undo the main subframe bolts, what I'm going to do is going to use a jack with a piece of wood. I want to support the subframe, and also just notice that bolt at the front there, we need to undo this. But we want to support the subframe so when we undo all of the bolts, the subframe doesn't just drop on us. Right, so there's 2 bolts either side of the subframe we need to undo. and there's one in the middle. So there's 5 bolts from underneath the subframe that you're going to be undoing. I'm just kind of showing you here where we're going to place the sockets. So they're 19mm, and we're going to undo these. I'm speeding this up quite a lot. Now there was quite a bit of resistance with some of these to undo them. They have been on for an awful long time, and you may find that you're having to break them off with a breaker bar because they are very stiff, but once it has been done to a certain extent, you can get a ratchet on there and you can undo it nice and quickly. So we'll just do the other side as well. So you can see you've got the rear subframe bolt, which you just undo here, and then you've got the other one which goes through the subframe itself, and you just need an extension piece on that. So we can just come up through here, and then we can undo this part of the subframe. Now there's the middle bolt still to do, which is attached to one of the gearbox mounts to the engine. So we're going to undo that in a second, and look at all that corrosion coming off. And this is the last one, so I'm just loosening this off. We're going to take that off. Okay, so the subframe is now ready to come down after we take these split pins or cotter pins out of the ball joint. We're going to undo the nut that's on there, and then we can hopefully just drop this straight down. Now on the driver's side, this pops straight out of a crowbar, no real issue. On the passenger side it didn't, so what you're going to see me do in a minute is undo this and drop it down. I'm going to drop the subframe, and I'm waiting to get a ball joint splitter for the other side, so that's why I didn't do both sides before dropping the subframe. Now luckily this one came undone straight away, probably means it's been done at some point in the past. And then we're going to drop the subframe, and we can see we've got the other side left to deal with. So I ordered a ball joint splitter, I got that, and I needed to get quite a wide one actually for this. It sort of barely fit over, so it needed a little bit of manipulation. So the ball joint splitter, the jaws go underneath, the splitter, the centre part goes on top. We're then going to use a socket on there to undo it, which is going to undo everything. I needed to reposition this just a tiny bit because it was moving off kilter. Now when these actually go, they will go very quickly, so make sure you've got none of yourself underneath it. This might be one where the subframe maybe should have been in place and done, but it's for slow-mo. So again, one of the tools you may need to add to your collection for this is a ball joint splitter. But with that now done, we can remove the subframe. In the next video, part 4, we'll be removing the gearbox, we'll be swapping over all of the bits from the old gearbox to the new gearbox, and we'll be installing the new gearbox back into the car. If you have any comments or questions, please leave them in the comment section down below. If you like the video, please remember to like and share with anyone you think it would help. And more than anything, thank you for watching.